Hi guys, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Pieter-Louis.
Welcome to our podcast, Legend and Lure, a World Tour. I originally planned to focus on the werewolves of the Black Forest for this episode, expecting rich folklore like last week's episode of the Mummelsee water spirits. I was intrigued by more of the region's legends. I was hoping for plaques, statues, and rich folklore much like the Mummelsee, but beyond general mention, I found little detail. So I expanded my research a bit. Join us as we dive down the rabbit hole of the European werewolf lure. I found quite a few stories, so I will try to start from the earlier legends and then to the most recent as we go through all the stories. Let's start with the ancient times and early folklore of the 8th and the 11th centuries. One of the earliest mentions of werewolf-like figures comes from Norse history. The ulfheðnar, translated as wolf skin warriors or possibly wolf heathens, were elite fighters distinct from berserkers. Unlike the frenzied battle rage associated with berserkers, the ulfheðnar were more elusive but equally fearsome. They followed King Harald Fairhair, the first king of Norway, and were said to wear wolf pelts over their chainmail in battle. I don't know what chainmail is.
Chainmail, it's what the knights wore. You know, that thing it's like braided with steel wire. You know what I mean? It's like it was...
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm just thinking like chainmail is something sent in my emails, like I get chainmail.
It's almost the same thing, just think 2,000 years later and not at all what you just said.
Anyway, the sagas mentioned them only briefly, but their experience paints a striking image of warriors who embodied the spirit of a wolf. Another figure from Norse folklore is Kveldulf, meaning evening wolf. According to legend, he transformed into a wolf at night. However, unlike the ulfheðnar, Kveldulf is described as a berserker, someone consumed by battle rage rather than fully embracing the identity of the wolf. The ulfheðnar were sometimes believed to be Odin's chosen warriors. Descriptions of them are chilling. Odin's men went without their mail coats and were mad as hounds or wolves, bit their shields, they slew men, but neither fire nor iron had effect upon them. This is called going berserk. One of the most iconic depictions of these warriors came from the Torslunda helmet plate. It showed a one-eyed warrior, likely Odin, standing beside a wolf-headed warrior armed with a spear and sword. This imagery suggests a direct link between the berserkers and the ulfheðnar and their connection to Odin himself.
This is interesting because you're going into Norse mythology, obviously Odin and all of those things, but remember as well, being Icelandic, Norwegian, where all this is coming from, where this translates from, wolves were something that's abundant. Wolves, you were afraid of, they were wolves. It's in the ice, it's up in the north. So it's just interesting that they found something that's so abundant, so powerful. So they made a whole like or whatever of a wolf or following
So
mythology of a
apparently,
wolf.
and I'm guessing because it was called weather, there was they're described as the warriors normally wore wolf coats, so they looked like wolves. And I think that's where the legend came from, because they had these coats on, and then obviously if they had war and you looked from afar, it looked like wolves attacking people.
Especially remember, this is very cold. It's very high up north.
Exactly.
So there was a because it would have been a big wolf outfit over this chainmail.
Yes, and then obviously the legend and lore comes from the fact that as they later became the wolves that they put on.
With
so
a berserker, so
yes.
it was a warrior that just went crazy.
Yes, and they basically turned into a wolf, so to say, but never, I don't really see it, they physically turned into a wolf, but they did what wolves did, and so on.
Howling
like biting and howling and going completely nuts.
Like it's something you said earlier about biting the shields.
Yes.
Is that like a thing? Is it?
That's
Are
where
they
the
really hungry?
I don't think it's hunger, I think it's rage.
Mm.
You bite
Like
stuff.
it's berserk.
Yes.
Yeah.
but obviously that's my opinion. So, while Norse warriors embraced the wolf spirit in battle, centuries later the werewolf legend took on a far darker tone, with real-life accusations and deadly consequences, one that blurs the line between folklore and true crime. Meet Peter Stump, also known as the Werewolf of Bedburg in 1589. Now, this tale really caught my attention because 1, Peter Stump is a self-proclaimed serial killer, and 2, there's an actual hiking trail called Werewolf Wanderweg in Bedburg, Germany, that you can walk down to follow his story from his birth to his death. The town of Epperaf, where Peter Stump was born, is not around anymore. It was a small town of 20 half-timbered houses. The town fell in 1968 after almost 800 years, but there is a information board up about the farm where he was born and grew up. Now, this story is dark, so if you're squeamish, you might want to skip ahead at a few places here and there. So the big question here is, who is Peter Stump? He was a well-known, respected, successful farmer who became widowed in the 1580s. He had 2 children, a daughter, Belle, who was likely over 15, and a son, though little information was really available about him. During Peter Stump's very gruesome trial, where he was stretched on a rack and tortured to make his confessions to his sins, he confessed that he made a deal with the devil at the age of 12 to satisfy his cruel and bloody mind, as well as his inordinate lust. The devil gave Peter Stump a griddle, at some places referred to as a belt, which when worn transforms him into the likeness of a greedy, devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with eyes great and large, a mouth great and wide, with most sharp and cruel teeth, a huge body and mighty paws. When he removed the belt, he turns back into a human. Now, unfortunately, this was not a Twilight Saga type of wolf who was hot and tried to protect the village. Peter Stump was said to practice witchcraft, rape, murder, and cannibalism. He claimed to have had the power to turn into a wolf for 25 years from 1582 to 1589. He not only confessed to killing goats, lambs, and sheep and then consuming their blood during the time, but he also confessed to killing and consuming 13 children of 6 and 7 years of age, and 2 pregnant women whose fetuses he allegedly ripped from their wombs and ate their hearts, panting hot and raw. And that was quoted, the panting. I did not make that up. Now, if this is not bad enough for you, I'd like to add that he also murdered his own son. So make that 14 children. Stump claimed that he loved his son, but apparently his bloodlust was stronger, so he took his only son into the woods, transformed into a wolf, and devoured him, telling the villagers at the trial how he ate his own son's brains.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why there's no information about the son, apparently, because he wasn't important enough. I have no words.
It's a bit rough. Why would you not include his son in the 13 children already? Why does he...
Remember, 13 children wasn't at one time. He didn't attack a school. It was over. He attacked 13 children here and there. So I could say he killed 14 children. But
I'm going to dive a bit into Google here. I've got a theory.
I wanted to make it very clear that he killed his son.
I've got a theory.
Okay, well, you do your theory. I'm going on. So at this point, my research... I needed a bit of a breather. I mean, what the actual fudge? Anyway, according to a blog by my darling Let's Wander, just a side note here, if you ever want to travel or you're not sure where to go, look up this blog. It's the second time that I use them as a source, and she really makes you feel like you're there and gives you great advice and where to go and what to take with you, and it's really informative. I will definitely, if I ever go to one of his places, use her blog to go through the places or walk through the places. So, back to our evil werewolf / serial killer. Peter Stump was suspected of even more murders. one of them being a triple murder. According to the record, Peter Stubbs saw 2 men and a woman walking outside the walls of Bedburg. He called out to the men, asking for help with lumber while he hid behind the bushes. When one of the men came over to assist, he killed him. When the second man came to check on his friend, Peter Stubbs killed him too. The woman trying to flee was then also brutally attacked and killed.
Did anybody actually see him commit any of these murders?
We'll get to
This
it
is
later.
this is still just his own testimony. This is what he said while he was tortured.
Yes. It's unclear if he was or if he was threatened, but knowing the time, tortured. Anyway, another account is of a girl who survived.
Can we jump back? Wait.
Okay.
Is the girl that survived part of the serial killer's story?
Yes, she survived the attack.
Okay, so let's go on there. Let me hear what you've got to say. I think my theory is correct.
Let's just go into your theory and then I'll say mine.
So, in 1582 to 1589, remember 1582, very interestingly, they lost 10 days. Because they went over to the Gregorian calendar. So there's actually 10 days in the end of February that doesn't exist. So they skipped 10 days. It's very interesting. So it's like
That's
actually people
really
born
actually interesting.
Yeah.
How can you skip 10 days?
Yeah, I came across it while I was Googling it now. But anyway, they
So
skipped 10 days.
nobody was born in that month in those 10
Yeah,
days.
it was because, just while I'm at it, the Pope, what was his name? Pope Gregory the XII, so that's 13th, introduced the Gregorian calendar, resulting in a 10-day shift in the calendar, with October 4th being followed by October 15th. So they went October 4 and then nothing, 15th. So nobody was born on October the 5th, 1582. Interesting. But anyway, back to that. So this is just after or during the Black Plague. Now, the Black Plague is a very interesting thing of mine.
I'm very
Here we
hard
go.
rolling my eyes over here.
No, you can actually hear, I can hear you rolling your eyes. No, it's just, remember, in the Black Plague, they had a lot of theories of where the Black Plague came from. So everything was, they pointed fingers at everything. Religion.
And yet, instead of saying these people died of a black plague, they said it was a werewolf.
No, but remember, I'm going to go use that word of mine that you don't like, hysteria. Which means in this time of this happening, people were still pointing fingers at everything except for the rats and the fleas. They were basically, it was...
Yes, because the rats and the fleas ripped them apart from side to side.
No, but remember...
ate their flesh and whatever.
So there's quite a bit of hysteria. So we still hear at his own account. He's being tortured. He's being pulled apart. And at that point, I do believe that you'll say anything to stop the pain.
Just to be clear, there's two accounts. One says he was being tortured. The other said he was threatened of being tortured. So it's not clear if he was actually physically being tortured while they asked him the questions, or if he was just threatened of being tortured.
Even still, I would still make stuff up
A
to
bit
make people...
further down the line, I'll tell you why I don't agree with that specific...
Because remember, in the plague time, they basically... Just put it this way. At some point, they persecuted Jews for the plague. They blamed the whole Jewish religion for the plague.
Okay, but no matter what no matter how long you go on about the plague or anything like that, it still does not rip. It has nothing to do with them. It does not rip people apart. It does not.
It doesn't, but you will say anything. So there would have been accounts of stuff happening, and this guy basically just said, I did this, I did that, I killed my son.
I'll tell
ate
you
children
later
just so that they can finally put it out of his misery. He basically said the worst thing so they can stop the torture.
Okay, but I'll tell you later why I don't agree. But
Okay.
anyway. Another account is of a girl who survived. She was playing in a meadow with cows with other children when Peter Stubb ran up to the children, grabbed her and tried to rip her throat out with his bare hands. She was luckily able to scream, which caused the cows to chase after Peter Stubb and thankfully gave her a chance to escape. The only thing here that is a little confusing to me is the fact that they talk about his bare hands and not paws. So I really wish I could find out a bit more about this attack, as I would like to know whether she encountered Peter Stubb or his wolf form. Because that makes a huge difference.
It does. Well, maybe it's just a loss in translation.
It's very possible.
Because this would have been from Icelandic, Norse to
No, German.
Germans. Well,
No, it
would
was
have-
from German.
It was from Germany. Oh yeah, you're back in Germany now.
Yes.
So this is from German, and then there's two different
Translate to English.
two different Germans at the ears back into.
High German to English.
Yeah.
Anyway, with rumors of a man or a beast terrorizing the countryside, the town had to act. But how do you catch a creature that walks among you in human form?
But remember, you had to put a belt on to be a beast.
Yes.
This isn't the normal Hound of the Baskerville, full moon, bam, wolf. This is when he wanted to become a wolf, he put the belt on.
That the devil gave him, yes. That he made a deal with the devil for. That is correct.
Okay.
So there's two versions of how Peter Stump was captured. The first one is after parts of missing people were found in the fields. This caused a lot of worry and for the townspeople to believe that a wolf was stalking and attacking people and livestock. A few hunters grabbed their guns and dogs and set off to find a wolf. The dogs found the scent of the wolf and eventually cornered him. Peter Stump then removed his belt and transformed back into a human. It is not clear here if the hunters saw him turn back into a human or if they arrived once he had already turned back into a human form. Also, if this is correct, the correct version, then I would love to know what he did with the belt, as it was never found.
Into my little satiristic mind of things being funny was he standing there naked now? Because it wasn't a wolf wearing clothes, was it? So now take the belt off. Where do your clothes go? Do you still wear clothes when you turn into a wolf?
I don't know. I know it's a thing that's like in Twilight and so on, and the clothes fall off or something. But I'm guessing if you have devil's magic, your clothes, if your whole body can turn to a wolf, I'm pretty sure your clothes can disappear and reappear.
It was just interesting
So
thought.
it's
to just
possible that he's
this
standing
guy
there
standing there naked.
naked, or it's possible that his clothes can just. It's the same as the belt that's missing.
Yeah, but imagine you chasing
Did the
after.
devil come take back the belt so that other people couldn't get it? What happened to the belt? Did he hide it somewhere in the tree? What happened to it?
Okay,
Because
but that's the first version. There's another option.
they did actually send people back to go find the belt.
I can just imagine you going after a wolf with your hounds and then finding a naked guy, and the wolf's barking at you.
Well, the scent will be the same, so the dogs will still go at him. So, there's another version of how he was caught. In this version, a farmer caught a wolf, and whatever transpired there, the wolf's right paw was cut off, and the wolf escaped. The paw later turned into a human hand. This was then later used as evidence against Stubb, as his right hand was missing. So, that's interesting. But when you read a bit about it, it looks like his hand was missing for quite some time. So this is not really that they literally caught him now. It was just later used to say it was your fault. So it's not like they had the hand and connected it and look, it's your hand or anything like that. They just later used it in the trials and said, but you're missing a hand and this happened and it's your right hand. And so there wasn't an actual hand held there and this is your hand type of situation.
But how did they preserve the hand?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they brought the hand to the trials. I think they say there was a hand found after the wolf's paw was cut off, and now we caught you and your hand is missing, so it has to be you.
But it's like all the other. It's like all the other folklore from Europe or from this time. It is a lot of hearsay, a lot of he said, she said, came down. There's no real repetition yet. I think we'll get to, when we get to more werewolves, that there are repetition in the story. This is just a lot more of the made-up stuff. It's a lot like the basilisk. It's a story that was made.
No, I don't agree with you at all. This is very dark.
We've got a naked guy wearing a belt or not wearing a belt.
You're picturing him stop picturing the guy naked.
I'm picturing a naked wolf.
A wolf is naked.
Exactly. Bow chiki bow wow. Wolf.
There's no hope for you.
Anyway, no, it's just, and then going, a lot of this is it's like it's a written law. This is what the guy said. This is how it is, instead of a lot of proof. Back to he was tortured, so he's probably said everything, and maybe they cut off his hand while torturing him.
No, the hand is actual. It's not newly missing. No, that story is very clear that his hand was missing. It's not a fresh wound.
I'll stop referring to the plague and the torture part of this.
Thank you. That would be great.
It's just let me try and convince myself.
The torture
that
part
this
does
is,
not bother me because it was like I said, it was the two versions, and I do. Because if you think about the time and the hysteria, not the mass hysteria because of the plague, but of those times, if anything was witchcraft or wolves or vampires or something, that normally created a huge hysteria. Not mass hysteria of you, there was a plague, so it had to be this, but just hysteria because we're going to die.
But what else would it have been? Let's say in story number 2, I think, they found a bunch of body parts in the field of missing humans. What else would it have been if it wasn't wolves? Let's say there was a guy. Was this a serial killer?
So here's the thing, and this is why I cannot see it as a human doing this. Because if you find body parts, you should be able to see if it was a knife, a saw, or ripping apart like an animal. So the only other option is to say that it was an actual wild animal and this guy was blamed for it. But how he was caught, it wasn't like they went to his house and, oh, it's you. So that's why I'm saying the werewolf makes way more sense because you would be able to see if somebody was cut up or tore apart.
Yeah, but imagine this. You just lost your hand in a massive fight with a stray rooster. Not just, but at some point in your life, you had a fight with a rooster and lost your hand, or whatever you used to lose his hand. I can imagine. Buck, buck, buck. Anyway, lost his hand, and now suddenly someone comes knocking at your door saying, "Hey, listen, you are a werewolf because you don't have a hand, and we found a hand here, in between all these body parts. We found a hand, and it's."
No, they didn't say we found a hand between the body parts. Nothing like that. There was a farmer who fought with a wolf, and that wolf paw that he cut off, obviously would have, let's say, picked it up and thrown it in the trash or used it to show people, look, I fought with the wolf and I cut off his paw and brag about it, and the next moment it turns into a hand in his hand and he passes out or something. Something like that.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to explain is, remember, it's not a stupider way of thinking, but it is the 14th century type way of thinking. It was a lot smaller, so you had to try and explain everything.
They were scared of a lot more things.
They were scared of a lot more things.
That's what I'm saying. It's not mass hysteria. There's a type of hysteria, but it's not mass hysteria.
Yeah, they've never seen photos of anything. I don't think photos existed at this point. Yeah, everything was drawn back then, in the 14th century. So there's no photos, they only have drawings.
It's not 14th, it's 15, 18,
14th century is the 1500s, yeah.
Oh.
So there's always one head, remember? 21st century, I might be completely wrong, anyway. I'll Google it later. But 14th to 15th century, there wasn't photos. You didn't know what something looked like, and then you found a bunch of dead body parts, and you have to explain this to someone, and then you said, I'm guessing wolf, because you had no proof. You didn't phone the police and came over, because that did not exist.
Like I say, they could say, I'm guessing wild animal. It can be bear, blah, 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 blah. They saw a wolf. The only thing you can say is there was a wolf and they killed a person because they couldn't find a wolf. There was a wolf. Somebody had to see a wolf. These people had to be torn apart. So the only thing you can say is, okay, they killed a person instead of the actual wolf who did it, but then the wolf was gone, so... And the body parts stopped happening, so it doesn't make sense.
And remember, wolves hunt in packs.
Exactly.
So if it was normal wolf, there would have been a lot of them.
And in this case it wasn't, because obviously then they would be hunting the bunch of wolves. So I lean to werewolf. Anyway, to add to this growing pile of I don't even know what to call it, during his confession, and this here is the part where I say he's not lying, because no person in his right mind would do this. Anyway, he confessed to have an incestuous relationship with his daughter, Bella. In some versions, it's his mom, not his daughter. I have a name here somewhere. Where is it missing? Beelin. Sorry guys, butchering of names. Well, very...
Haha, butchering.
Yes, it's a very... Gepast, what's the word? It's very... Fitting.
Fitting, appropriate.
Fitting for this. Anyway, and then he also admitted to having a mistress called Catherine Trompen, who was also named as his daughter's godmother in one of the accounts. Back then, there was obviously very bad. It was bad if you were unmarried and you were a woman and sleeping around, so obviously this was a big deal. So no person, I don't care how tortured you are, is going to give up, 1, your mistress, 2, your daughter or mother, and say something like that in those times because you know they will be punished too. Why would you go through this torture and lie about that?
Were they still alive?
Yes, they were there.
When he was at trial?
They were there at the trial.
Okay.
And he said, my daughter or mother, I don't know. I don't know which is worse. I'm struggling. Either way, it's bad. I don't know which is worse. Either way, it's bad. It's completely, I don't understand.
Well, the thing is, this is a very again account from him. He said this while he was either being tortured or not being tortured. His confession.
Okay, so tell me something. We have 2 sons, and you're being tortured. You're being pulled apart. Are you going to tell them you have an incestuous relationship? Obviously you're not, but whether you are or not having, are you going to tell anybody else, those 2 kids that you love more than life itself, you had an incestuous relationship with them?
Yes, again, someone said he said this while being
No, it's
tortured.
reported.
Whatever was reported, they would have been more clear about it.
No, it's reported.
In some accounts, it was with his mother, in some accounts, it was with his daughter.
That's the only thing that changes, whether it's his mother or his daughter. There's an actual diary entry of one of the guys back then that went into this as well. That's the way the account changes. He says it's a mother.
You remember the Salem
He
witch?
was part of, yes, they talk about a lot with the werewolf trials. The werewolf trials were first.
Oh, yeah. But it's a lot like the Salem witch trials. It's also basically everybody became a witch. They basically burned everyone. They found a reason and they said, no, but you said it was your daughter. And then they burned the daughter. And then while burning the daughter pointed at a wall. And then they burned the guy that built the wall.
No, the guy's diary, you're jumping ahead. The guy's diary that talks about it, he was upset about how it was dealt with. He was not actually okay with how he was murdered. So he would not have made something up to make it more, I don't know, sparkly for people to read it or something. He actually felt that this would, if this was reported further, it would create issues and be turned into, I don't know, something...
Mass hysteria.
No, he wasn't worried about mass hysteria. It was more, he was worried that it would cause more a sensation rather than actually not thinking this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
The way he was, okay. The way he was tortured and everything. But let's go on because we're jumping ahead. So, after all of this, Pieter Stamp was sentenced to death. His daughter or mother and mistress was burned alive with him due to his confession.
Salem witch trials.
Okay, but once again,
everyone.
You knew this. You knew in this time they would be burned. Why? Mistress, cool. I was tired of her anyway. Your mom or your daughter, you would not put there. Even if you were having an incestuous relationship with them, you would not have done this to them.
It just doesn't seem right. And the puzzles don't fit. It's exactly like the Salem witch trials. It makes sense if you are there. And
no, you're making stuff up and saying no, but the facts are there.
So he was, while being tortured, said stuff, and they decided to burn people.
You could have said a lot of stuff. You never had to bring up anybody. You would rather bring up your worst enemy's wife and say I had a relationship with her than the people you actually loved. If you are being tortured, you're not going to give up your closest, your loved ones. you would rather give your enemies people. I would say, oh, I hate this neighbor. Let's say it's his wife. Something like that. You would not give up your own family.
Sure, I won't. You won't at all. It's just I'm trying to see, even if this was true, why would he say it?
Because he's being tortured out of him, so he told the truth.
Allegedly.
Yes.
On completely different note, do we now categorize this werewolf with witches, or do we categorize this with vampires? If you say that you see a trend of things happening, you see a trend of legends and lore, they go in a direction. So
they all intertwine.
They're all intertwined, but like we said last time, like I said last time, it was, it's like the vampire and the ghost do kind of tend to cross, but a ghost and apparitions are one thing. Vampires and werewolves do tend to be the same thing, but now it seems like a werewolf and a witch is in the same category, and a werewolf and a vampire is different.
Well, you need witchcraft, or in this case the devil, to be able to turn into an animal. But if you go back to vampires and so on, there are some of them that can change into a cat, a dog, a werewolf.
One of those weird things they do.
Yes, so it goes both ways.
So this can actually still be vampires. It can always be, all of this is just vampires.
I think the
stabby.
I think the vampires don't have paws, so you won't have the scratch marks and so on. You'll have those bite marks of the two teeth. The molar? What teeth is it called?
Yeah, the front.
The vampire teeth.
The bitey teeth.
Yes, so I think you'd have seen that indent of your two teeth. So in this case, no. I think you could see a wild animal or vampire. Also, it doesn't make sense. Why would you be a vampire and then rip them apart as an animal when you turn into an animal?
Well, nothing about the vampire stories makes sense at all, anyway.
Moving on. So the next bit is a bit gruesome. So if you don't have a strong stomach, skip ahead a bit. His execution was on the 31st October 1589, and it was said to be brutal. He was tied to a pinwheel, skinned alive with burning hot pincers. His bones were broken by the blunt side of an axe head, and then he was beheaded. His body was then burned along with the two women. Authorities then erected a pole with a wolf's figure on it, placing his severed head on top of it as a warning. Interestingly, his execution had a symbolic element to it. His flesh was removed as punishment for consuming human flesh. His bones were broken to prevent him from rising from the grave later. That goes to the vampire side, but it's...
Yeah, but even so, this is symbolic. They had a solution, I believe. I don't think they thought this. There was a manual for finding a werewolf. What do you do when you find a witch? And they went to that manual and said, okay, let's do this.
So yes, his head was cut off as a direct reflection of the way he consumed human brains and of the lives he destroyed as a deterrent to others. So basically, we're putting this pole here with his head and the pinwheel and the picture of the wolf, so you know, if you try anything like this, this is going to be you. Or if you try anything, we're going to punish you the way you hurt people.
You've got an interesting photo here. I'm enjoying looking at it, the pinwheel with the head on top and the wolf, or the dog, or I think that's just a dog. But anyway, let's go for wolf. But
I think they put an actual wolf on top instead of a picture of a wolf.
This is a brutal picture. It's just, and there's a lot of wolves in this picture. I've got no idea. But anyway, just going back to this pinwheel, the pinwheel is an interesting form of torture.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
And the thing is, this is about Pieter Stab, but if you look at it, it looks like three males instead of two females and one male. But I'm guessing they weren't allowed to draw naked females back then.
We probably were, but I don't think they were. I don't know. Maybe
they wouldn't have put it in the post, in the newspapers. So yes, it's horrifying. It's gruesome. I will put the pictures on Facebook after this is posted, so anybody can view the pictures that we're viewing as we go through it.
I quickly want to Google the pinwheel torture, just make sure. what it is. I don't actually know what the penguin torch is. I've heard about it a lot of times.
I've actually never heard about it.
think
I
they
know
call it
of
a
hanging, I
breaking
know,
wheel.
but pinwheel is new to me. Being tied to a pinwheel, I've heard being tied to a tree stump and being burned. I've heard being hung from a tree. I've heard a lot, but the pinwheel is new to me. Head being severed with a, what's that blade that comes down? What's it called?
A guillotine.
Guillotine. I've heard of all of this. The pinwheel is new to me.
I'm on Wikipedia now. That's the first one I've got up with. Therefore, the most common form would start with breaking the leg bones. To this end, the executioner would drop the execution wheel on the skin bones of the convicted person and then worked his way up to the arms. So I think they tied you to the side and then basically stretched you open. The primary goal of the first act was for the agonizing mutilation of the body.
They tied you to the front of the wheel. So basically, if you lay it down, you're flat. And then obviously, as they torture you, they can turn the wheel around and turn you around, which hurts you more.
Okay, I get it. So it was just so that they can reach you.
maneuver you and hurt you very badly.
So now you're upside down. Now you're the right way around. Now you don't know where you are, and now let's play spin the
turn
bottle.
you onto the places where I physically...
And then they spin you, and then the direction you point is the next witch they're going to burn. So
Stop that. Anyway, it appears that there's a 22-page pamphlet that has survived throughout history telling of Peter Stubbs' trial and his confessions. So here's what I'm saying. This actually survived all this time. There's an actual pamphlet. I swear I read somewhere else there's another one. It's just that they English. So it was a translation from the High Dutch. So obviously there is a few
High
things.
German.
No, they said Dutch.
High Dutch is something else. Dutch is Netherlands.
Okay, so maybe it's
So
German.
it's
Maybe somebody said something
it's
wrong.
a translation issue. So Hochdeutsch.
Okay, yes.
Hochdeutsch is German.
So anyway, then there's a diary written by Herman von Weinsberg, where he describes the trials as gruesome deaths. If I read through what they said, what he said and so on, all the pieces they post of what he said, and it really does look like he felt the trials, they were a bit too gruesome. They took it too far. So he wasn't very happy about it, but anyway, it was really interesting read.
But does he in this diary ever say what was he convicted of? What was his sentence? Did they spoke
Serial
about cannibalism,
killer.
but was it like you killed these 3 people? Did they name people that were killed, or were they just we found body parts of missing people and that was you?
No, he claimed himself that he killed 13 children, 2 pregnant women, and then they said, okay, but these people died and these people died, so they added people. Where I said, okay, but you killed these as well.
So just to understand, I'm very confused now.
He confessed.
But they arrested him for what?
That's the thing. It is, if you look at the two...
Because he didn't have a hand.
No, never did they say. Like I said, that I don't think they went to his house and arrested him. Not if you listen to the stories, but then again, we weren't there. But it never sounds like, oh, the police got all the info and they went to his house and they arrested him. It sounds like it was a chase to get him. He was fighting with someone. It was some sort of chase. He was caught with a body. Something happened for him to be caught. It wasn't just, oh, it has to be him.
And then they tortured him, and then he confessed to
Yes.
a lot of things.
But yes, so I don't know if everything he said was, but I honestly believe there's just a bunch of stuff that tells me this is true. And 100% there's no way I would give up a loved one. No
But
way.
let's say this is true.
You can pull me limb from limb, you can destroy me. I will throw every name out there. Sorry neighbors, sorry everybody else out there. My family will stay safe.
Yes, it's just like I said. It's just the most confusing part is. Let's say I do believe. Let's say this is a werewolf. What and who did he kill? Like I said, they found the body parts.
Like I said,
he said stuff, but
I would love to get a hold of this pamphlet. At 22, I would read everything. I would love to get a hold of this diary because I'm really interested. It was just parts here and there. It was a research paper that I went through and was so informative and was so interesting. And I would honestly love to get my hands on these things that he was quoting and showing. But yes, unfortunately, I don't have it. And obviously, he was discussing multiple publications, and where the one went more for sensation and the other one went for facts and so on. So it was a lot of things that was discussed. But all in all, in the end, it came down to he's a confessed serial killer. He gave up his daughter, mother, whatever, and his girlfriend basically. And he confessed that he killed his son. Now, I mean, where is his son? He had a son.
Son is gone now.
So why is the son gone?
And remember, plague. A lot of people were gone.
Okay, but you would have a funeral. It was a small village. They talked about what, 22 huts or something. Well, it was not a big place. You knew your neighbors, and he was basically a wealthy farmer. He was a well-off man. They knew him. Everybody knew everybody. It's not like they would have known he had a son or he didn't have a son. It's not like a big place where you can pass somebody and not realize you would know. I haven't seen your son in like 2 weeks. Where is he? Somebody would ask. Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm trying not to bring plague into this.
Don't.
So basically, just I'm going to say again on the plague. So the plague just snuck in here again. If your son died, you would rather say he was killed by a werewolf than say he died from the plague, because now you brought plague into the village. So now you're guaranteed death.
He didn't say he died from a werewolf. He said he killed him.
Yes, because if he said his son died of the plague, he would have been killed anyway.
He could have said he was killed by a werewolf. He didn't have to say, I was the werewolf. He was dying anyway, so why would he care if his son died by a plague?
That's a lot of interesting parts just not fitting.
No, not in your head, and everybody else's head it fits.
If he was a werewolf, not a werewolf, there is no victim, there is no crime.
There's body parts, there's victims.
And then a hand.
You're looking, it's a part. You're stuck to this hand.
I'm stuck to the hand, yeah, because
Remember
it doesn't make
one
sense.
thing, this hand was a paw first. So if this is the correct version, somewhere out there, if this was not Peter Stubb, somewhere out there was a werewolf who lost his paw that turned into a human hand. So either way, if you believe that version above the first one where he took off his belt, somewhere out there's a werewolf that lost his paw, which turned into a hand. So they had the hand. So either way, magic happened. It can't be mass hysteria. He's not going to hold a paw in his hand and imagine through mass hysteria turned into a hand. He'll have the actual hand. Even if they had to bury it eventually, they would have saw it first.
Okay.
There's no way you can go around this.
I can just imagine this farmer
being happy that he beat the wolf.
Hoeing a field with his little ox and whatever you call that, the hoe thing, whatever, making holes in the floor and says, oh, yeah, body parts. Oh, here's a wolf. I'm going to cut off his leg. Okay, cool. Paws off. Oh, in between all these body parts.
No, you are connecting two different stories. You're connecting the first story and the second story. The first story, because they found body parts around the woods and so on, the hunters went to look for the wolf.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, the wolf came onto the farm. No body parts, the wolf came onto the farm, and the farmer obviously trying to save his livestock. Trying to save his livestock. He fought the wolf with a knife, a blade, or whatever, a sword, I don't know. And he cut off his paw and the wolf ran away. So there's no body parts on this farm. So you cannot say, oh, but he cut off his paw but picked up a hand of somebody that was murdered. It's not the same story. You are taking two stories and putting them together. It was either or, not both.
Okay, so apparently I'm wrong.
What's new?
There was a farmer cut off a wolf's paw, no body parts, and the paw turned into a hand.
Yes. For anybody that actually listened to what I said and didn't mix up my stories. So can we move
But I like
on
my
now?
version more. I like my version of a bunch of body
Mass
parts in this
hysteria and
field.
boring and making up your own stories. Yes, we know. Moving it along swiftly. Back to my walking trails. The Werewolf Wanderweg Trail follows his story, marked by signs featuring a howling wolf. It takes you from the site of his former village, that doesn't exist anymore, to where his trials took place. There are 7 stops along the way, each telling a part of his life, if I understand correctly, whether as a werewolf or a serial killer or both. That was certainly a dark journey through history. Despite everything, I still want to visit. Maybe after a few prayers of protection, though.
I think we have to get into more werewolf stories.
There's still a bunch coming.
Because it feels like we're just touching something here that doesn't... I'm not getting into it yet. You still have to convince me.
There's a lot, and I'm just hoping some of them turn better, more Twilight, less serial killer.
You just want a little Jacob. That's all you want. I'm gonna come home at one night and...
Hopefully a bit older. I'm too old for that now.
Sure, okay.
So, whether Peter Stump was truly a werewolf or whether his crimes were exaggerated by fear of hysteria, your favorite part. One thing is certain, his legend still haunts Bedburg to this day. Some might say he was just a man, others believe he truly transforms under the devil's influence. Either way, the werewolf of Bedburg has secured his place in history. Next week, we'll continue exploring werewolves and folklore across Europe. Hopefully with stories that focus more on legend and less horror.
If you enjoyed diving down this rabbit hole in the world of weird with us, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share your own thoughts. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more content. And please share our podcast with fellow folklore lovers to help us grow.
Until next time, stay curious and keep the legends alive. Bye.
Bye.